Welcome to my hometown of Kentwood, Louisiana. It's a small town about an hour north of New Orleans. I feel the need for speed!
Lynne seems to have inherited this gift of shrewdness from her grandpa. So she cheat? Shrewd? I guess shrewd could mean like she's good at judging character.
She is doing those baby bottle pop sponsorships, so we know she's taking whatever she can.
Any parent knows raising children can be extremely gratifying and frustrating all at the same time.
We all want our children to succeed. What happens when they do?
For Lynne Spears, the mother of two star daughters, Britney and Jamie Lynne, the highs and lows of parenting have been especially intense, and they've all played out in the public eye.
I think the biggest regrets that I have right now, by looking back, I didn't follow my mother's intuition a lot of times, or my gut instincts. I would let people talk me into things or, influence me, and I was right. My initial gut instinct was always right on.
Britney wanted to sing ever since she was a little girl, but the years of sacrifices, auditions, performances, albums, fame, and paparazzi left the little Louisiana family swept up and spun around, and nothing turned out the way anyone ever imagined or wanted. Now Lynne shares the story of the Spears family as only a mother can. If you want to stay up to date on what's going on in the book club, then do subscribe to my channel. We also do all kinds of other things here, so turn on your notification bell. Never know what I'll do next. Chapter 2 is called Kentwood.
Welcome. I sort of welcome home, I guess, you might say.
I know, I'm so excited to be home, my hometown.
This is cool, special for you?
Oh God, yes.
Anything special planned for tonight's show?
No, not really. I'm just gonna talk to the crowd a lot, because my family's out there and all my friends, are really screaming for me. So I'm excited.
Well, as you know, this has to be one of the more exciting days for Kentwood, I would imagine.
Oh, definitely, especially for her family.
I wouldn't think most moms in Kentwood would necessarily be into sort of uprooting their lives and moving there with their daughter, but it was fine with you. You were excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No
I mean, she wanted to do it,
Right.
and if we had the opportunity, we were going to take it.
Mm-hmm.
My sister, Sandra, did not have her official driver's license when we used to go driving together. She at the wheel and me riding shotgun, cracking gum. Cracking gum?
Chewing tobacco, cracking gum.
I mean, I'm from Louisiana. I ain't never heard nobody say cracking gum. Usually they would be saying like doing a dip or like chewing tobacco. I think this means like popping gum, like making, like blowing bubbles. I don't know, letting the wind blow through my hair. We were country girls through and through. In those days, in rural places, it was common to have 12, 13, 14-year-olds tooling around back roads and even down streets in their daddy's cars. Daddy. Sandra was about 15. Mama sent her, so these are sisters, so Sandra and Lynne are sisters. Mama sent Sandra to Kentwood to get some groceries. As usual, I was her wing woman. Sandra was quite responsible and a good driver for a 15-year-old. But that day, she hit another car, and not just any car either. A gleaming Cadillac with a boat hooked up to the back. Y'all pulling boats behind the Cadillacs in Louisiana? Knows what was going on. Neither of us were hurt, but when Daddy found out, he was livid. So Lynne is like in her probably 40s, 50s at this time, still calling her dad Daddy. But that's a pretty common thing to do in the South. I grew up in the South and always thought it was kind of weird, but whatever. Okay, so here's the dad saying, here's his quote. "You couldn't have hit a beat up old Ford pickup, could you?" He stormed and sputtered. "No, you had to go and hit a Cadillac with a boat hookup." Sandra was in the doghouse forever. Well, sounds like Lynne married someone just like her dad. Daddy never forgot that wreck. Countless times before Sandra was about to step out the door and go someplace, he would throw in his 2 cents. "Sandra, be careful, watch what you're doing. I don't want you to go hitting another Cadillac now. Take care of yourself, because I don't want to lose you." With everything that happened in my life after I became an adult and a mother, I'm grateful my heart was not hardened to those beautiful times. Although I doubt beautiful is the word my daddy, I just hate this word, would have used at the time. Expensive was more like it. Now that Sandra's gone, these memories bring healing and comfort, tears and laughter. I can still see her face when she hit that Cadillac. When the hard moments and hours of grief threaten to overtake me, these snapshots from our lives together give me strength. Reading this, I can really imagine what it was like and what it looked like, and I'm from Louisiana.
All the kids in my neighborhood have go-karts. It's fun when we get to play chase though, but you have to watch out for my mom's bottle bed. Where I come from is country, and when I get back home I start talking country again. Stuff like yonder and hey y'all or what y'all doing, stuff like that.
Oh, from Malta to Louisiana. Kentwood, Louisiana is not exactly an exotic destination. There's basically the Kentwood Cafe, Connie's Jewelers, a bunch of dollar stores, and a Sonic drive-in, the hub of the community. There was a Sonic at my, well, a little farther out from my hometown, but it was like everybody would go there. Everybody knows everybody for generations. My daddy's people have been in that area as far back as anyone can remember. That's very common in Louisiana. Like whenever my sister did her 23andMe, a large portion of her genetics was like Louisianian, like French settler. Like it was very, very like, we've been there for some time. And then like we traced our family back. There was 13, I'm the 13th generation Louisianian in my lineage. My kids are gonna break that chain. Oops. But on my mama's side, the family tree is more colorful and glamorous. Her father, my grandfather, was Anthony Portelli, came from the island of Malta. Malta is a small, densely populated nation consisting of 7 islands on the Mediterranean Sea. It lies south of Sicily, east of Tunisia, and north of Libya, in case you were curious. Now you'll know the answer next time you're on a TV quiz show. Anthony, who's this Malta grandfather, so Britney's great-grandfather, came to England in the 1920s and married a British girl and changed his name to Portelli. Oh, that happened with my family's last name too. They had like a kind of Spanish sounding last name and they changed it to French. The Portels had 2 daughters, Joan, my aunt, and Lillian, my mother. Okay, so Lillian Portel. Mama grew up in London. Oh, nice. A city she loved and missed until the day she died. I can remember her telling me stories of how she and her family survived the Blitz. In September 1940, began their sustained of the United Kingdom by my mother's hometown for 57 nights in a row. Well, she had a bit of a stubborn streak, and one night during the Blitz, I don't know what the Blitz is, she didn't want to go to the air raid shelter across the street from her house. Okay, I probably would have gone to the shelter. It was a nasty, dirty, smelly place, and she said she refused to join her parents and sister despite their pleading with her to come. It wasn't a good night to test fate, as it turned out. The shelling was so close, the roof of their house was blown right off. Mama grabbed her beloved dog. She made a dog stay with her. At least the dog could have went to the shelter. And ran screaming across the street with her father yelling, "Run, Lil, run." She cut her feet running on the broken glass all over the ground, but she made it to the air raid shelter safe and sound. It must have been soon after that when my parents met. Daddy was in the United States Army, serving his country overseas. There were dances in London for the soldiers, and at one such dance, Barney Bridges and Lillian Portel first laid eyes on each other. Mama was lovely with her father's dark Maltese coloring. You didn't have to put that part in there, girl. And she just sparkled with fun. Daddy was handsome too, but he had an advantage over the other American soldiers. The driver for the U.S. generals had access to some goodies that must have seemed very appealing during the heavy rationing of the day. Essentially, he wooed my mother with candy and cheese, which was apparently effective because she agreed to marry him.
Damn,
bribes.
Candy and cheese, that changed pop culture forever.
In Kentwood, a local paper ran a photo of my mother with her glossy brown hair and her stylish London clothes. It was notable on the home front that a local dairyman was bringing home a foreign beauty from across the ocean. Thousands of young brides from Europe and Asia streamed into America, I think she means like the United States, after the war ended, but in rural Louisiana, this was a bit of a first. Some of those brides arrived on these shores pregnant, and their new American husbands were no-shows, but Barney Bridges was waiting in New Orleans for his bride to fly in from New York City. He was eager to bring his Lillian home. Daddy had bragged to Mama about all the land his family owned, hundreds of acres in Louisiana, but as she was to discover in short order, a landowner in England is a far sight from a southern farmer. There was no lush manicured lawns in Tangipahoa Parish. They spelled parish with 2 R's. I'm blaming Laurel Craker. Girls 1 R. Down in the parish, I'm from West Baton Rouge Parish. That's how they say it down there. I say parish, but they be saying parish. And there certainly was no genteel country estate. There were, however, dirt roads, snakes, and unrelenting heat. Home sweet home. The new Mrs. Lillian Bridges had some adjusting to do. Starting immediately. Mom and Dad drove more than an hour through the dark, swampy terrain on their way home from the airport. Where are all the lights? She wondered out loud. A city girl to her core, Mama mourned the life she had in London, where she could walk down the street every day for fresh bread and produce. Southern cooking, on the other hand, mandates that everything, and I do mean everything, is fried within an inch of its life. She recalled with a shudder once how her in-laws would cook beans outside in a huge vat, adding chunks of lard by the slotted spoonful. To Mom, she may as well have been a million miles from all that was comfortable and dear. She was homesick for her parents, her sister, and her country. Poor thing cried every night, and Daddy was at his wits' end trying to make her happy. Inside, she was always the fashionable London lady, yet outwardly, she had to play the role of a farmer's wife stuck in the sticks. But she made it. Mama was married in love and resilient, and eventually she was able to walk in step with the strange rhythms of life of her new surroundings. She even enjoyed some aspects of her rural existence, like feeding the adorable calves. Of course, she always wore the most attractive Wellingtons, what the English call rubber boots, that money could buy. Homesick or not, she was determined to make this new life work, and in 1947, she had another reason to sink her roots in more deeply into the American earth. My sister Sandra was born, followed 4 years later by my brother, Barry, and then, after 4 more years, me, the baby of the family. Years later, when I was in high school, our family traveled to England to visit relatives there. During that trip, I met Aunt Joan and Uncle Archie Woolmore for the first time and stayed at their lovely home. I think it was also the first time I began to grasp just what my mama was missing so dearly on the other side of the ocean. I remember being full of admiration of the British way of life. Sitting in the Woolmore garden, having tea with my relatives, I gathered that the English valued education and travel, and they felt travel was indeed an integral part of one's education. Jamie, Lynne, and I in London having coffee at tea time, we went overseas for the European Kids' Choice Awards.
European Kids' Choice Awards.
Some of my mother's relatives were accomplished musicians, and one great uncle owned a bookbinding company. Engraved in my mind is how quaint and beautiful the kid's uncle's garden was as we had tea amid his flowers and shrubbery. Years later, I would pattern the garden of my home based on my memory of that afternoon with the charming English bookbinder, my mother's uncle. That's cute. So then we have this picture, and there's like a little subchapter called Someone to Watch Over Me. And the picture under it says, a picture of the 3 siblings at a family outing. I wasn't very happy. When Sandra was 12 and I was just 4, I would jump on her back and we would head down to the woods and this wonderful creek. It was just like something out of a Mark Twain novel. Well, maybe the creek was a little smaller and less grand than the Mississippi, but in my childhood imagination, it was just as significant or magnificent. We'd be joined by a dozen or so of our cousins who were all more or less Sandra's age. They built rafts with hammers and nails, and I would help in my own little way. There was a huge tree with massive gnarled limbs that bridged across the water, and we would climb all over it, back and forth. There were snakes everywhere, but Sandra kept a close eye out for them and a close watch on me. Until the day she died, Sandra was someone to watch over me.
That's how Britney felt too. She thanked her at like a bunch of, like, Britney was really distraught.
From the bottom of my heart, my fans, I love you all. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here right now. And these are for you, Aunt Sandra.
The Aunt Sandra.
When she passed, it was 2007.
A lot of people think the reason Britney shaved her head was because Aunt Sandra had cancer. And it was like a solidarity, like she had died recently and she was shaving her head. Many of you may feel this way about your sisters, but I think that Sandra and I had a singular bond of closeness. One of my earliest memories is Sandra playing dolls with her friends. I was her living doll to dress and boss, and they had to make do with plain plastic dolls. My sister was so devoted, she even brought me along on a number of her dates. She was so beautiful. She was a beautiful teenager with hazel eyes and a heart-melting smile, and she had her share of suitors, some of whom were none too pleased with having to share Sandra with the likes of me. I just want Lynne to come along with us tonight, that's all. I heard her plead into a whisper to one young man as I sat in the back seat of his car. Who knows, maybe she needed a chaperone on those nights, and I was certainly less daunting guardian than Mama or Daddy would have been, but I truly think she just wanted me nearby because we were 2 peas in a pod. Okay, well, so I don't know what that's all about. And the little next subchapter is Family Matters. The dairy was a wonderful place to raise children. Daddy got up at 3:30 or 4:30 a.m. to milk the cows, and by 6:45 there was a big country breakfast on the table, with everyone sitting down to homemade biscuits, eggs, bacon, and cream from the top of the milk pail for coffee. There was no variation to this morning ritual. Where the cheese grits, Lynne?
Make my baby cheese grits.
In the summer, we would run outside and build rafts. How many rafts do y'all need? And play in tree houses. There were moccasins, and that's like a water moccasin, meaning like a poisonous water snake. And rattlesnakes galore. But do you think my parents ever told us to wear shoes? Huck Finn had nothing on us. I used to be running around with no shoes too, this is true. There were black widow spiders too. My grandpa Bridges was bitten once, but I don't want to tell you where. You could have left it out then. Let's just say it's a piece of family lore that's best left to the imagination. You didn't have to tell us. I loved riding horses. My favorite horse was called Wishbone because my brother, who we called Sonny, wished on a turkey bone at Christmas for a horse. Sonny was just 4 years older than me, and he and I spent hours together playing and riding Wishbone. After a good hard day of play, we'd come in for supper and watch the Andy Griffith Show together. That's a terrible show. Mama was the heartbeat of our home. It was immaculate, though we felt comfortable enough to put our feet up, so to speak. The woman did vacuum every single day. We would tease her about her fastidiousness because she even had a habit of clearing off the table before we were finished eating. "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to rush you," she would say so sweetly in her British accent. It is kind of funny to imagine Lynne Spears being raised by a woman with a British accent. And that actually explains, like, Britney might, like, have been channeling her grandma with a British accent. We never knew that. I didn't know that. "Can I get you something else?" she would ask. She liked things to be pretty, but orderly. Everything was in its place. When she was in housework mode, she could give the Energizer Bunny a run for his money. I need her to come to my house. My friends oohed and awed at how she spoke and how pretty she was. Mama had a thick, dark brown hair, and she was always kept it styled and lovely. No small feat for a 50s farm wife in rural Louisiana. I'd always wished I picked up her elegant accent. She would laugh at me when I'd imitate her speech. And do you know she even had a ladylike laugh? My laugh is so awful, it could peel paint. Aw, that's probably not true. One thing I did adopt from my mother was her love of books. She adored reading, history books, biographies, mysteries. She would check them out of the library a pile at a time. Like my mother, I often turn the pages late into the night. It helps me sleep, just as reading always soothed her mom at night too. Daddy would rather visit with his fellow farmers than poke his nose in a book. He always wished he had a college education, but he had signed up for the Army instead. All three of us kids attended college, Sandra for 3 years and Sonny and I for 4. My brother and I both received bachelor's degrees, him in agriculture and Lynne's was in education. In no small measure, the credit goes to the dad for gently pushing us toward college and instilling in us the value of learning. Born Barnett Bridges, Daddy changed his name legally to Barney Oldfield Bridges in honor of the race car driver and pioneer Burn Barney Eli Oldfield, who died in 1946, was the first man to drive a car at 60 miles per hour. Why did he change his name?
Honestly, we had a pickup truck named Sonny that we named after. We were watching the Sonny and Cher show on an afternoon with tea and crumpets on the
Wishbone.
Wishbone.
The dad changed his name legally from Barnett Bridges to Barney Oldfield Bridges.
I mean, don't they have a Roadkill Willie too in there somewhere? there's
I haven't seen the Roadkill. He was the first man to drive a car at 60 miles per hour. I want to go fast. In the 30s, when Daddy was coming of age, apparently there was a saying going around. If you were behind the wheel, zooming around like a speed demon, not us editing, zooming like a speed demon, people had a comeback for you. Who do you think you are, Barney Oldfield? Daddy, do you know how silly that is? I would tease him about appropriating his idol's name. He would blush a little, look away, and smile, but secretly he probably daydreamed about taking the corners at Daytona with a gleaming, souped-up Fiat or Blitzen Benz, just as his hero namesake did. We always had new cars, and Daddy loved to drive. He bragged about never having had a wreck, and he got such a kick out of telling stories about how his family, Mama, Sandra, Sonny, and me, wreaked havoc on the community by being let loose on the street. Yeah, because Sandra hit that Cadillac, remember that? He never let him forget it. When I play cars with my grandson, I'm gonna leave the kid's name out, who is obsessed with anything motorized, I like to think that boy got his zeal for automobiles from his great-grandfather. Okay. We attended the Methodist church every Sunday. Mama and us kids, that is. She had been raised in the Church of England. She commented once that the Methodist church was the closest to the tradition she had grown up in, though now I can see they were not very close at all. Daddy would come with us once in a while, but he had some issues with the churchy people. Same, Barney. That's not to say he didn't believe. I would catch glimpses of him lying crosswise across the bed reading his Bible that was falling apart because it was studied so often. He knew that book. When spiritual gifts were being passed out, my daddy got discernment. He had an uncanny ability of knowing the true person inside anyone he was dealing with. Am I related to Barney? This built-in radar in my father's soul meant he could make accurate predictions about a person's character, and thus what life would probably have in store for them. One boy I dated did not meet with Daddy's approval. "You watch, Lynne," he said gravely. "That boy's gonna run around with his wife someday." And that's exactly what ended up happening. Of another boy, Daddy predicted correctly that someday he would turn out to be feckless and live off his parents. That means not good with money. Jamie Lynn seems to have inherited this gift of shrewdness from her grandpa. So she cheat? Shrewd? I guess shrewd could mean like she's good at judging character.
She is doing those baby bottle pop sponsorships, so we know she's taking whatever she can.
She has always been especially good at sizing people up fast, almost instantly, either taking to or just as easily disliking certain people. If she keeps it sharp, that gift will stand her good for the rest of her life. Daddy also taught me to treat everyone the same, no matter their status, color, or beliefs. When I was a young girl, one of his employees was an old, uneducated man who had the tendency to hit up the liquor pretty hard. Well, that sounds like Jamie Spears. Sometimes he wouldn't show up in the morning to help my father milk the 100 head of cows. But I can still remember how my daddy talked to this man gently and with respect. Once I asked him why he was so nice to this man, And the dad said, the poor old guy has had a hard life. We don't know how lucky we are. Those words have left a lasting impression. I've always tried to teach my children to treat everyone with respect. Often you don't know a person's story, and if you did, you might very well understand his or her actions better. So this next 2 paragraphs, the last part of chapter 2, Kentwood, and it's a little sub-paragraph called Homesick. It's been 3 decades since Daddy died. So the dad died probably 4 decades ago now, 40 years ago. And I'm still longing for someone to take care of me the way he always did. Aw. All of these memories of Mom and Daddy make them feel closer somehow, yet I miss both of them more keenly than usual too. My love for them is still immediate and strong, even though death has separated us for many years. Just as my mother remained homesick her entire adult life for England and her family there, I am homesick for my parents, for that safe place of comfort and security they provided. I guess that will never change. The way I was raised, there was a time and place for everything, and our lives unfolded in a predictable fashion. The chaos that was to come in my own family life as an adult was nothing I could have ever imagined or wanted. Yet, in Barney and Lillian Bridges' home, I learned this. When you're a family, you stick together as a family, no matter what. That foundational truth of my life would be rocked to the core in the years ahead. Well, Jamie doesn't follow those rules. So, chapter 2 is mostly, like you said, there's like a lot of describing why things are named what they are. We get kind of a look into Lynne's family life growing up. She talks about her mother, who was English, but I think her mother's father was from Malta, from an island in the Mediterranean Sea, and there was a lot of sort of different cultural influences that would have made Lynne's mom, Lillian, be who she is. She seems to have been, you know, a hardworking woman who was loyal and wanted to make the best for her family, cooked breakfast for them all the time, but she also had a little bit of a way of doing things in her own way, by her own rules, so that kind of informs you a little bit. You see Lynne saying that her dad, who's changed his name, I guess he went by Barney eventually, he was a really good judge of character, and he was like, you know, good at predicting bad things were gonna happen to people, and apparently Jamie Lynn also inherited that gift.
I don't care if she wants to run away to a rainforest and have a zillion babies in the middle of nowhere. Or if she wants to come back and dominate the world the way she has so many times before. In
some ways it was quaint and sweet, but generally I think chapter 2, titled Kentwood, is a little sad. Like there's an overarching kind of theme of sadness, because she's kind of ending the chapter off saying like she misses her mom and she misses her parents, and I don't know, just kind of sad. I mean, I could be interpreting it with a little bit of a bias because I'm also from South Louisiana. I also had a quaint and very, very rural upbringing, and I also have lost one of my parents. So maybe it's like, oh, it's making me sad because it's making me think of that. But so far, this is like super informative. I did not know a lot of this stuff like about Lynne's mom's, you know, origins and ancestry and stuff. So yeah, I mean, looking forward to chapter 3, good looking Southern man. Wonder who that could be about.